watching and you will see the scenes. And after that, we are going to talk about Burger and some other Hungarians in the British film.
My name is Peter Musatic, and I'm creating the Cineclassic series. And we'll make a short Q&A with Mr. Jörg Baron about Emeric Pressburger.
And Mr. Ahmed Shouki from Fipresci, the vice president of Fipresci, who will sit with us and tell some words about Fipresci. Welcome, Ahmed.
Thank you, Gilliam. We are here in his hometown. We visited his birth house today in the morning. That comes with the celebration, or we are celebrating the centenary of the Fipresci. It was formed in 1925. It's a federation that was formed between Belgium and France, and now the headquarters are in Germany. We are in Hungary now, speaking about this multi-national director, filmmaker, and I'm coming from Egypt. So that gives us a glimpse about how unique that art can be going through the multi-continental, all the borders, all the countries can be transpassed easily by cinema. And we are in Fipresci has a very high care of history of cinema, of the film archive. That's why we really love what you are doing here in Miskolc, in celebrating the history of cinema, celebrating such a big talent that like Imre Pressburger, naming the main hall of the cinema after this man who was born here in Miskolc, and of course hosting us as a federation for the third year to have our General Assembly here. We were supposed to be actively participating in this panel with two of our colleagues, one from Slovenia, one from Germany, who are experts of Pressburger's work. But unfortunately, due to force majeure for both of them, they couldn't be here with us, neither for the General Assembly nor for the panel. But I think what we have here is more than enough. Our dear colleague Gergi is the expert that we can go to and ask about Pressburger, and I will ask you to be excused, and I will go back to the audience and listen to what Gergi will tell us.
And Peter, of course.
Of course, Peter. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much. Thank you. So,
gyorsan magyarul mondanám, hogy aki nem ért angolul, annak fülhallgató. So for the Hungarians, that earphones are available, tehát fülhallgatót lehet kint kérni, és folyamatos szinkrontolmácsolás van angolról magyarra. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So my first question would be about the roots of Emeric Pressburger. So he was born as Pressburger Imre József here in Miskolc 120 years ago. But what do you think? What is really specific in this country and this empire, in the former Austro-Hungarian Empire? What made him so an open-minded personality?
I think it's a very long story. I don't know where to start this story with the roots of Pressburger, and there's almost the same roots had the Korda brothers, and later Michael Curtiz and some other great figures. I can mention Adolf Cukor, the founder of the first big studio, the Paramount, who was born here in this neighborhood, or William Fox, one of the founding fathers of the old Hollywood. So what is the secret of this fertile soil here? And I think that what is common in these great filmmakers and personalities, and that they are coming from quite a poor background, and all of them were Hungarian assimilated Jewish. So they were coming from Jewish families, And that means that they had to learn how to adapt to different circumstances, to different cultures, to different ideas. So when this film was talking about Emeric Pressburger, somebody said that he was more English than an Englishman. And he said that you are not as English as I am to an Englishman because you were born to be Englishman. But I have chosen that I wanted to be an Englishman. So they had to learn during the century, during the years and decades, these Jewish families were wandering from the territory of the Ukraine or from other territories, from the east anyway, and now we are on the east northern part of Hungary, and they settled down, most of them, in this region. And they found a homeland and a home because in the last decades of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, they could assimilate pretty well, and they did. So learned how to assimilate and how to adapt to different circumstances, but on the other hand, they learned how to go and to wander if they had to. And after the First World War, after the fall of the monarchy, they had to move again to the West and to learn again new habits, new cultural identities, to change not their personality, but their identity. And that was the key of their secret, the secret of Emeric Pressburger, the secret of the other great British filmmaker, Alexander Korda, that they learned that they had to be very British if they want to be successful. They had to be more British than everybody else in Britain. One of the best friends of Korda was Winston Churchill. He was also the friend of Emeric Pressburger. And when they walked in the streets of London, and if you would ask anybody that who is the real gentleman of these three guys and who is not, everybody would point to Sir Winston Churchill, who is coming from a very old aristocratic English family, because he doesn't want to show that I am very British. He was wearing a very simple suit, he was fat, and he was walking slowly, and two excellent gentlemen in the most fashionable and very fancy suits are walking. And they were very British. But that was just the surface. But in the depths, they made deeply British films. So they made the best films about the English history. The Hamilton film about Lord Nelson and the Trafalgar victory, made by Alexander Korda. All the important films about the Second World War, I mean the patriotic films, it was called as patriotic films, was made by Emeric Pressburger. It was a whole series. One of them is the film you are going to watch tonight. This is the 42nd Parallel. It is about the democratic values and the tolerant in the Western world. So they are the best anti-Nazi films. It was called they were called sometimes in this even in this film propaganda films. They were not propaganda films, of course, in the sense of Hitler or Stalin propaganda films. But anyway, these films were advocating and glorifying the heroes of the free world, because they learned very well what does it mean not to be free and to live under a dictatorship and to be afraid of the persecution of Jews. So when there are Germans in these films, it means that Pressburger had to leave Germany. From Hungary, he went to Germany. And in 1933, when Hitler came to power, after the coup d'etat of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, he moved to Paris. And when the Germans went to, or threatened France, he moved to England. He stopped there. Some other guys went to Hollywood, but he stopped in England. So he had to go from town to town, from country to country, to culture, from language to language, and take with him this heritage of uncertainty and the ability to adapt different circumstances, to find new home, and to be the best always in his new homeland. And though that he was the best, he achieved it. The guy who was born in this small dirty house some blocks from here, you watched it. So I don't know if maybe it's just one of the explanations, but because of course he was extremely talented, but it's clear that he had a special talent, and he was an excellent writer, and he learned the art of writing first in Hungary, in the company of the best Hungarian writers who became famous scriptwriters, mostly in Hollywood. And he learned the humor, the typical East and Central European humor that helped them to survive with this humor. So there are a lot of factors. So it wasn't enough that he was coming from Hungary and he was a Jewish. He was an extremely talented man, but he could live very well with this talent. And I told some of you previously that there was, Peter, you know it very well, a line on, maybe it's just a legend, there was a line on the wall of a Hollywood studio that it's not enough to be Hungarian, you have to be talented too. And that's it. So he was also very talented. If it's a good answer, but I think that you can add it because you know a lot about this topic. You wrote a book.
Yeah, but it was very exhausting, so I think it's understandable then what was the secret of Emeric Pressburger. Gerhard Midding, who is unfortunately not able to join us tonight, sent us a beautiful essay about Emeric Pressburger. It's really a beautiful text, and one part of this is, if this essay is really was really touching for me. He wrote about the experimental character of the films by Powell and Pressburger. So, of course, we have to say these films are not only the films by Emeric Pressburger, but it's a duo, so Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger. So it's a really unique collaboration in the film history. And the point is, according to Gerhard Midding, and even others, that they experimented with the color, and the way of the storytelling, the dialogues, the acting, and so. Would you speak a little bit about this factor of their films?
Yes, so I think that was a great moment when they met. They met in the studio of Alexander Korda, because that time when Pressburger arrived to London, first he went to Korda, of course, because Korda was the famous Hungarian tycoon, film mogul, the head of the big studio, London Film Studios. And he went there, and Korda said that he's working on a film with a new director, Powell, and he's looking for a scriptwriter. And they met. And that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And after that, they separated, not from each other, but from the Korda clan, and they found their way of their own, which was totally different from the style of the Korda films. Korda made high-budget blockbusters for the international market, included for the American market. He had an office and a studio in Hollywood as well, led by the other Korda guy, led by Zoltán Korda. And he made very successful but very traditional films. Comparing his films with the films of the Powell-Pressburger duo, I can say that these films are experimental. So Pressburger and Powell was a real creative artist. So if you watch Scorsese's favorite film, and I think it's the best film of the Powell-Pressburger cooperation, The Red Shoes, it's an experimental movie, which it's a very banal and simple story about the ballet dancer, but it mixes the scenes of reality and fantasy and dream and reality in a very original way. And if you see another film of him, that is The Matter of Life and Death, it also mingles the different layers of reality and dreams and uses the dreamlike nature of the film itself. So I think that Pressburger's film is rather pieces for us, for film fans, for film buffs, for professionals, because his style was absolutely unique. Not his style, but their style. They signed most of their films together, and that means that they were more or less the pioneers of the modern cinema, and that's why they were the models for the young new Hollywood filmmakers like Martin Scorsese and others.
And it was also an experiment about the adaptation, so how to adapt a ballet scene, how to adapt an opera like The Tales of Hoffmann. So that part is also kind of experiment.
Yeah, so it was so provocative that, for example, in Red Shoes, there is a 16 minutes ballet scene, which starts on a stage. It's like a theater. And at some moment, the ocean breaks on the stage. And it's fantastic. And you are shocked. What happened? And it's beautiful. And there are a lot of such type of provoking moments just in this 16-minute scene. But the fact itself that in the middle of the film there is a 16 minutes ballet episode, it's also very provocative. And it breaks the story and tells the story in nutshells.
I've heard, it's true or not, I didn't know, but I've heard that Martin Scorsese has a shrine in his home in New York, a Red Shoes shrine, so it was in the corner of a room. So yes. He admires this film so much.
Yeah, he told that the poster of the Red Shoes, which is a very simple poster, there are two red shoes on the poster, and that is the last take of the film, is in Scorsese's bedroom, because he says that when I wake up every morning, I want to see that image, the two red shoes, and I would like to wake up for that image every morning. It's nice, of course, and of course they were not only experimental filmmakers comparing with the films of Korda, that on the other hand, these films were talking about the melting pot, not in America, but in England. So about a nation that accepted different type of cultures, and that's why this nation was very successful. And it was the opposite of Nazism that he hated so much, which was just a one race, one culture nation. So the mixture of different cultures. There is an interesting scene in one of his war movies. It's also full of provoking and experimental scenes. It is The Matter of Life and Death. It's full of dreamlike scenes. You cannot separate the dreams from the reality. And there is a trial in the heaven about the fate of the couple, the two lovers. If the guy has to be dead and go to heaven or to anywhere, or he can stay on earth with his love, with a beautiful English girl. The guy is American. And it's a trial, and there are different judges. And the prosecutor refuses all the judges because one of them is German. And he said, no Germans hate the English people. Okay, the second one is a Frenchman. No Frenchman, we don't like the French guys. The third one is Spanish. We had a lot of problems. We had wars with Spain. No. So we cannot accept objective judgment from these judges. And he refuses all of them. And the defendant and the defender, the advocate, stands up and says, okay, now it's in America. Now I would like to ask a judge full of Americans. And of course the prosecutor cannot do anything else that said, okay, I have to accept in America the Americans. They cannot be anti-Americans. And there is a sharp cut, and you see the new row of judges. First, a black guy stands up and said that I'm Mungabi Bungi, and I'm from Africa, I am American citizen. The second one is an Arabic, I'm Mustafa Ben Shak, I'm a citizen of the United States. The third one is from India, it's an Indian name, and says that I'm Shalak Shikhan from India, I am an American citizen. The fourth one is a Spanish name, has a Spanish name. The second one with very black hair says that I am Giovanni del Frusco, I am American citizen. And you cannot imagine that what is the end of the film and what is the judgment of these judges. So, and you also could see a soliloquy in one of his other films about the different cultures and about the melting pot, which is the, I think, which was very important for him, because his whole life was about the mixage of nations, peoples, culture, and he believed in it, and it was very important during the years of fascism and Nazism, and it is even important now. So I think that their films are really very up to date. Even today you will see the film of the 42nd parallel, that it's also about this. There is a French community in it in Canada. There is a German community in it in Canada. There are Eskimos, there are Indians, and there are some natives who don't understand a word of it. That how come that they are happy? They are in a happy country. And they are happy because they are living together in a peaceful coexistence and tolerance.
We already mentioned Martin Scorsese, but there are many other great directors who are admirers of this duo, Powell Pressburger. Who are the most significant of them? And what were their aftermath?
You could hear an interview with Bertrand Tavernier. Bertrand Tavernier was the head of the Lumière Institute in Lyon. You know that, of course, better than me. And he was a great fan and lover of all these, of old cinemas, of course. And for him, Pressburger, or the Powell Pressburger films, were very important. So when they are working out the program of the Cannes Classics, which is a little bit similar to Cine Classics program, so you are our Bertrand Tavernier. One of the first films which they presented and showed themselves, Scorsese and Tavernier, in the Cannes Classics program, was a film of the Pressburger-Powell duo. And after that, they showed another one. I think that the first one was The Red Shoes, of course, because of Scorsese. So I think that there were a lot of filmmakers who are still fans of this fantastic couple because they feel that they were real innovators of the cinematic language. So I think that among the film fans and in the film world, among the film professionals, there are much more Pressburger fans than Korda fans. Korda is more famous, of course, and more popular, but the artist to follow is Powell and Pressburger.
Yeah. Do you maybe have questions or any remark?
Yeah, please.
Then please.
The floor is
I'm very curious what you think about Pressburger and his art. Yeah.
Yes, our friend from Croatia.
Thank you. Basically, I have a remark and a question.
Yeah.
I know that both Kertész Mihály and Korda Sándor made movies in Croatia also, in Kingdom of Yugoslavia back then, on the Adriatic coast. What is interesting is not that they made films in Croatia, but that they also adapted Croatian writers. So I don't know about Pressburger. The question is, did he made any films in Yugoslavia, Kingdom of Yugoslavia, so in this interwar period? And the remark is maybe that apart from England, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the countries that succeeded it were also a melting pot, since if we walk through Miskolc, we can see both the Protestant, Orthodox, Jewish and Catholic churches. So this was a melting pot. And also we saw in the film that Pressburger was living for some time in a Slavic community in Redna. I'm not sure if it's Serbian or Croatian, it doesn't matter in any case. And also one remark that one famous Croatian modernist writer, who was also a screenwriter for one of our early modernist films, wrote a review about Red Shoes. So just a remark, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, that Pressburger was very active in the film life of Hungary, but he didn't have too much time. So he mostly wrote scripts for film, but he himself didn't make a film in Hungary. So he went first to Germany, first to Vienna, then to Germany, to Paris, as a scriptwriter, and wanted to make a living of writing. He published short stories in magazines and so on. And he stepped into the film business or into the filmmaking activity only in London when he met Powell as a talented scriptwriter Powell needed. And it turned out that he's much more than a simple scriptwriter of Michael Powell, the also extremely talented young filmmaker. And that was the beginning of the story. But he was only a scriptwriter in Hungary or in monarchy. And you are right that the Austro-Hungarian monarchy was also a melting pot in a way. And this melting pot collapsed. And after this collapse, they left not the monarchy, because it didn't exist anymore, but Hungary.
Some other remarks, maybe?
Dana.
I think Georgi said the essential things about Michael about Emeric Pressburger and the duo he formed with Michael Powell. We all know how much Scorsese admired them and how influent was his movie. Where their movie. I know some Romanian film critic who had seen A Matter of Life of Death when he was a teenager, and he decided to make a career in film criticism. And yeah, he became one of the most important historian, in Romanian cinema. And I would also add on the list of Hungarian who made a big career in England, John Hallas.
Yes.
John Hallas is a big animator who made the famous feature Animal Farm. He adopted, always novel. Excellent movie, excellent and very influent.
Yeah, but he came a little bit later, so not.
Yeah, but he is the
30s.
Hungarian who made a
there are a lot of
career
Hungarians,
in England,
so of course there are a lot of Hungarians everywhere,
Yeah, and I was also interested in the documentary about his years he passed in Romania, in the Timisoara, in the Temesvari. And the movie talks with the nephew talks with some ex-colleagues of his grandfather, and they all talked about the way they were watching films in the 30s, in the 20s and the 30s. They talked about Greta Garbo movies.
Yeah, of course, that they were film fans and went to see films because there were a lot of cinemas in Hungary, even in the small towns that time. So they were watching, of course, silent movies in the 20s, and in the 10s. But anyway, they knew what cinema is. The first generation of immigrants, the Adolf Cukor's generation, a Fox's generation, never saw a cinema before entering to the United States. They didn't know what film is. But this generation could learn what is cinema in their birthplace because the small cinemas in the towns were very popular.
And I would also add the big influence that had the UFA years. He spent there. Hitchcock learned everything he knew about cinema in Germany when he worked at UFA, because the Germans were the best technicians. And when Hitler came, they all flew to the States, to England, and etc. And they brought some sophistication, in the style of their movies.
Yeah, that's correct. Berlin was the most important cultural center of Europe before Hitler. Absolutely. And everybody went there, included Pressburger, but went there Michael Curtiz, went there Korda, and they're trying to work there, and they made, Michael Curtiz made his most important European silent movie in Germany, but it was over. And that's why they became Hollywood directors, because of Hitler. So they can say thank you for Hitler for that. If they can, of course. It was just a bad joke.
So,
how much time we have? Yeah, a last question, because it's 7:30.
Or even a remark, if you...
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Gordy, for your very informative, presentation. Perhaps I have just a simple question concerning the legacy of Pressburger, where he is now. We visited today his house, and when I was going to the house, I had the intention to go and then to see where he used to live, to eat, and so on and so on. But the house was closed. So we together, the house, and all the filmic legacy and all the things that he left behind is it now in a museum that can people visit, or is it somewhere in family or whatever? If you can, clarify these things.
So it's a sad story because the house, so it's an old dirty house with closed windows and closed doors, and Barbara asked the mayor was with us this afternoon, and Barbara asked the mayor that why don't you renovate this house and make a cultural center or a museum of this house. And he told that we are planning that, they are constantly planning it, but we don't have money. I don't know, they have money for that. So it's a question of choice, that how do you use the money? It's too bad, but there are different approaches, because in this very small village where Adolf Cukor was born, they built up a beautiful cultural center, a museum, and they organize every year something for the memory of Adolf Cukor. In another village where William Fox was born, nobody is dealing with the legacy and memory of Fox. So it depends on the mayor and the community, I think.
And I must add that 5 or 10 years, a long time ago, I've been to Turkeve, where the Korda family were born, and they organized some small celebration, but there were no specific, I don't know, memorial plaque or museum or anything there. Yeah, so it's 7:30, so
Yes.
Finally, I would like to ask you for a short intro for the feature, and then we'll immediately start the film.
I think I have already made it. So it's one of the war films about the Second World War, because the British government ordered patriotic films about the war. And it was made in 1941. It's important to understand the story, when Canada was in war that year, but the United States was not. And and the beginning of the story, that the crew of a German submarine has been sunk by Canadian or an American Air Force, and 6 of them can swim to Canada, to the Canadian shores. But they would like to go to the States to get through the 42nd parallel, because for them the United States is a land of freedom, because it's not a hostile country. So in Canada they would be prisoners of war as enemies, because Canada was the member of the British Empire, and they were in war that time with the Nazi Germany. So they wanted to go through Canada and to reach the American border. And some of them are fanatic Nazis. And they have to learn, they didn't, but they have to learn the rules of different democratic communities. First, a French one. The French guy is played by Laurence Olivier. He is in this film for 20 minutes, and he's imitating to be French with a very funny French accent, you will see, and with a black moustache, so there's the stereotype. And you will see in the end Leslie Howard, another big star from Hungary. And his character in the English films was the character of the perfect English gentleman. And he also was a Hungarian Jew. And he died in a plane crash during the war. And according to some gossips, Hitler himself, or Goebbels himself, ordered to shoot down his plane because of the anti-Nazis film, he was playing important roles. I mean, Leslie Hard, and that's the way he died. I don't know if it's true or not, but anyway, he had a plane crash. So that is the story, and enjoy the film. It will be in English, an original copy with Hungarian subtitles for the Hungarians. And thank you, of course.
Thank you very much.